Hi guys, I'm Julian. Welcome back to the channel, and let's take a look at the French Revolution. No, not history lesson though, because I'm really bad at remembering historical events. However, let's take a look at the French Revolution in a book called Untitled Chapter, written by Charles Dickens. And I promise, this will be a very peaceful and wholesome video, so please continue watching. Summarize of a very brief insight and brief summarize of Charles Dickens' life, together with other elements of the book that I often overlook. But now, let's jump straight in. So Charles Dickens was born on the 7th of February 1812, and he passed away on the 9th of June 1870. He was born as Charles John Huffman Dickens, and he was an English author and a social critic. He was regarded to be one of the greatest authors and novelists in the Victorian era, to the word being the best-selling author even in today's standard. And I bet some of his book can still be entertaining to this day. Like I always favor Christmas Carol on New Year's Eve, even though in Vietnam we don't even celebrate New Year's Eve or Christmas anyways. But I swear, Charles Dickens' novel can vary in multiple categories, and his story alters so spontaneously. You can find Charles Dickens' story from fiction to coming-of-age story, and then ghost stories, and then freaking historical novels too, as if all of that have to do with each other at all. So Charles Dickens was born as Charles John Huffman Dickens on the 7th of February 1812 and passed away on the 9th of June 1870 on Middle End Terrace Field, which is now 393 Commercial Road. Not that you guys need to remember though, because just in case you visit England, please. So Charles Dickens was the child of Elizabeth Dickens and John Dickens. Years later, they moved to Fitzrovia for Charles Dickens' father business, which is John Dickens' business. And there, Charles Dickens was described to be an outgoing child, but a very voracious reader. He read the work of Henry Fielding, he read work like Robinson Crusoe, Tobias, and he is a very voracious reader, just like many authors I mentioned in the book review. However, after his father was sent to prison, Charles Dickens' early years of private education ended, and he was sent to Wellington House Academy in Camden Town, which is also the place that inspired some of the scene in David Copperfield. And the headmaster at that school, sadistic behavior and brutality to the boys and children there, was the main foreground inspiration for the headmaster in David Copperfield. However, as time goes on, Charles Dickens would go on to work to be a clerk, work for attorneys in London, and then he would also work as an actor in Covent Garden. And then in 1833, he first published his first ever work, that is A Dinner at Popular Walk, and he was working at the House of Commons in England. And then, 3 years later, in 1836, he will publish a book that is Oliver Twist, and accept a proposition for editor in a newspaper or journal. However, 20 years later, Charles Dickens would go on to publish and made his success with his masterpiece, that is Great Vacation and A Tale of Two Cities. So now, let's take a look at The Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of time, it was the worst of time. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. It was the year 1775. Well, apparently that is a very famous opening line in A Tale of Two Cities. But now let's take a look at other elements of the book, which I want to take a look at more briefly in this book reviews. But now, let's jump straight in. So the first element I want to mention is about this book specifically, and the publication of the book together. So Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities is a 1859 historical novel written by sets itself in two locations, that is London, England, and Paris, France. So you got to be Charles Dickens, one of Charles Dickens' best-selling novels, together with being one of the best historical novels. Apart from many interesting things about this book, I found particularly interesting about how layers of the story and the background was put together and merged together to make this whole book so intriguing and so entertaining. And so the book might suggest you about a very clear image of the French Revolution and send detail into specific story of specific numbers of character. So, like I mentioned before, book the first of the whole Tale of Two Cities sets itself within the year of 1775, and then book the second sets itself within the year of 1780, and then the last book the third, the autumn, sets in the final year, that is 1782. So the running and the publication of the book first runs in the magazine in the series, like in the series of each month it releases a new chapter, each week it releases a new chapter like that. And if you want to buy and read the whole thing, you're gonna buy a bunch of newspaper or like a bunch of magazines or things like that, apparently that's the case of that time. So the publication of the book run kind of very weekly and kind of continuously, like a continuum, so it's good. So the publication of this book ran from April 1850 to November 1859. So let's now mention about the title of this story. So let's talk about the title of this book. A Tale of Two Cities, a very interesting title. The word tale already gives you a kind of feeling for some reasons, but I want to talk about the two cities. Like mentioned before, the two cities here being London in England and of course Paris in France. However, due to this way of building the word two city here, they also already give you a hint of the place that the whole thing can be taken and be held in the novels. Moreover, by giving it two city, they also already built this wall of contrast between two places. One will be London and the other will be France, Paris. And because of that, they also try to separate these two worlds from each other and make you contrast will build a very, very compelling storyline. One place is the peaceful, one place is the place where our main protagonists live a happy life, and the other place is the place of hunger and sadness. And you can clearly see when with a couple of sentences in the first opening of this book, in England there's of king and queen. In France, there's also a king and queen, and both of these parties believe that nothing will ever change. However, because of that, the author is often built and replicate again and again about this building of contrast within two places. So after talk and rant a bit about the title, let's move on to the actual story. Oh boy, this is gonna be a long one. But now, let's jump straight in. 1975, a message carrier called Jerry Cruncher brought the message from the Townsend's bank owner and manager, that is Jarvis Lorry. So Jerry Cruncher bring a message called Recall of Life, a very strange message to be brought. However, this message really referring to the release of a prisoner called Dr. Manette after 18 years behind bar in the Bastille prison. Yeah, that one. So after this message being transferred, we are introduced to him taking Dr. Manette's daughter, 18-year beautiful Lucie Manette, to France to fetch him and bring him back to England and London to live. We are quickly transferred to France, where we are introduced to a small wine shop of Monsieur and Madame Defarge, both of whom had known Dr. Manette, but we will soon that in later chapters. So Dr. Manette's condition was worse. Unable to recognize any loved one, he had taken up an obsession with shoemaking. Because in prisons he had been tortured, and he has been mentally tormented by many guards in prisons. And he was imprisoned in a place called 105 North Tower. He had taken up the obsession of shoemaking, which he often returned when he had bad days or bad memories or bad events happen to him. So all of them decided to take him back to England. Jerry Cruncher and Lucie bring him back to England. And then 5 years later, we are quickly transferred another scene of the trial of Charles Dickens, who has been tried for the things of treasons against the King and Queen of England. And people who accuse him are John Bastille, a spy apparently, and Roger Clive, who has sworn that they have seen him giving information of the King and Queen of England to the French. And the people who stand behind him are Lucie and Dr. Manette, Mr. Shriver, a lawyer in Tellson's Bank, Jerry Cruncher, Jarvis Lorry, also from Tellson's Bank, and Sidney Carter. However, when Mr. Shriver pointed out the resemblance that both Charles and Sidney bears, because these guys look identically the same, that's crazy. The evidence of Georgia Clark and John Bastille are dismissed, and Charles Dickens is now a free man. And in France, while the thing is taking place, in France, the Marquis of Evermont roams recklessly on the street and kills a child. The father of child, Gaspard, was despair, was unhappy and devastated at the death of his child, and the Marquis throws a coin at him, as if the child is some kind of dog, something, an animal like that. And struck with this despair, this unhappiness, and this sadness inside him, Gaspard was so angry that he wanted to kill this Marquis. Late at night, some people saw Gaspard ride together with the Marquis to his palace under his carriage. And when they reached the palace, the chateau, killed the Marquis, leaving a note saying, "Drive him fast to his tomb. This is from Jack." So 12 months after the death of the Marquis, Bastille is quickly caught and hanged over the well in the village, where the women and children shower and take water home. And during that time in England, Charles Dickens decided to ask Dr. Manette for his marriage with Lucie Manette. However, when he tried to talk about his real name, which is Charles Evermont, Dr. Manette refused, prohibiting him talking until the day of his wedding. The day arrived, and he and Lucie married to each other. But beforehand, we all learned that Sidney Carter also had this feeling of love for Lucie himself, but he knows that he had gone through bad days and will ruin her life if she ever loved him back. So he swore that he will help and sacrifice himself for her and anyone she loved, which can be a very essential things in this book at the end of this novels. And then in 1792, Mr. Jarvis Lorry of Tellson's Bank decided to go to France, Paris, to collect some important documents for his client in France. During that time, there is also rumors and heat from an upcoming revolution of the people of French. And during that, the people decided to work together in order to plan a revolution, and that revolution is going to take place and plays significant things in the plot twist of these novels. Charles Dickens and together with other people who are our friends are safe for the daytime. However, he is very worried for Jarvis Lorry because Jarvis Lorry was going to danger. During this worrying, Charles Dickens also received a letter from Gabelle, one of his very servants during his time during staying in France, and Gabelle told him that the people, the revolutionary, has put him in prisons because they have this perception that everybody who works for noblemen ought to be put in prison because they work for noblemen. Yeah. So Charles is determined to go to France and Paris and try to help and save Gabelle. However, when he went to France, Paris, he is immediately taken to the La Force prisons, and while staying there, he rumors that he sees people killing the prisoner on the street, and they have a new machine designed specifically for killing people and chopping off their heads. This is called the Guillotines. Okay, so because of that, his family decided to go to France and help him. And they think that bringing Lucie Manette together with her young child would be a great idea. So all of these guys going to France to help Charles Dickens. And at first, the help of Dr. Manette proved to be successful. He was wrongly imprisoned for 18 years, being tormented and tortured, and he was beloved by the whole citizens of Paris or France. But after 1 day of release from prison, though, Charles Dickens is again arrested and sent back to jail. And what happened though is during the search for prison in the Bastille prisons, and during the release of that by the revolutionary, Madame and Mr. Defarge decide to search thoroughly on the specific place called 105 North Tower, and there they found a very special piece of letter. The letter tells of the story of Dr. Manette's imprisonment, and he is condemned to all evermonths. Because of that, Charles Dickens had been convicted by this letter by Mr. and Mrs. Madame Defarge, and there's no point to take back his work because Dr. Manette already wrote this. Dr. Manette is prohibited from ever taking back his work in the letter. Charles Dickens is sent to prison and probably gonna die with his head chopped off. And during that time, Sidney Carter also arrived and decided to help by swapping his clothing with Charles because these guys look exactly the same. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And because of that, Charles Dickens is set free and returned safely with his wife and daughter, and his wife, Dr. Manette, and together with Jarvis Lorry, go out of the whole place, and leaving Miss Pross, Lucie Manette, loyal servant and friend, together with Red Cruncher behind, so all of them go safely back to England, with Charles Dickens carrying necessary paper of Sidney Carter. Though Sidney Carter is beheaded, however, during the time before that, he meets Sesame Street, a woman who do sewing clothing and design. Those told him that she was convicted wrongly, and Sidney Carter talk and comfort her, and he start to find a path that is a lighter part. And he would have been for these things, he would have meet his soulmate and the person who have enlightened him. This young Sesame Street woman who is pure innocent and nothing wrong in her life is now convicted to death. And Charles Dickens' clothing, Sidney Carter tried to reveal to her that he is actually Sidney Carter and not Charles Dickens. And before both of them beheaded, he kissed comforting her, and before the couple minutes he died, he imagined a better future for France, better future, and the people who all do all this wrong against the innocent one will die. And that's exactly what happened in the future. Because I'm the future caveman and I'm coming into you to tell you that that's what happens. Now, so during that time, Madame Defarge decided that she wanted to kill the whole family of Manette too, but when she tried to find Lucie Manette, she only find Miss Pross, this friend and loyal and amazing servants of Lucie Manette. They have a fight. The fight broke out like crazy, and it's ended with Miss Pross winning and accidentally killed Madame Defarge. Madame Defarge tried to kill her with a gun, and in a struggle, they pushed the gun far so badly that the gun bullet struck through Madame Defarge's head, and she died instantly.